as well at the trade and economic level. So one argument has been that maybe non-resolution of these issues is one way to continue going forward, right? We cannot resolve them, we keep talking about them, the timing is not there, so let's just continue our relations on that basis. Of course, the question would be, what if there were a resolution on some of these issues? What would that actually mean for Greek-Turkish relations? Because we are used to the fact that relations are neither good nor bad. We are used to the fact that there seems, at least from the Greek perspective, and I suppose if someone were to do a study from the Turkish elites, I think the trust levels would be the same. And maybe our Turkish colleagues could tell us this, talk to us more about this. But what if there were a resolution? Well, how would this impact relations? What dynamic this could create is something to consider. Then the other issue has to do with decoupling regarding Cyprus. What do I mean? Yes, I mean, I see a trend there, and I don't know if my colleague Kostas agrees, between the 92.2% of the elites that consider the resolution of the solution in Cyprus, or finding a solution to Cyprus, as necessary to improve Greek-Turkish relations. On the other hand, in terms of threat perception, or in terms of a crisis breaking out in Cyprus and impacting the two countries, the levels are 4.6%. So is there maybe in the thinking a decoupling among elites? Kostas Karamanlis, when he came to power in 2004, at some stage had talked about decoupling, and then he pulled back. There were articles in the press, and this happened to be a position at least at the foreign ministry. We should focus on our bilateral relations. Pulled back, public opinion is not ready for this, and elite opinion is not ready for this. But I think there's some maturity in the opinions. It's a normal reflex to say that the Cyprus problem is on the top of the agenda, but it's also interesting how the Aegean issues seem to be more of a concern. So this is just something that comes out of this. What about public opinion? Because here we are with what we've explored is elite opinion. What about public opinion? Where does it stand? It's true that if you look, especially over the last few years, at qualitative polls taken, especially by the company Kappa Research that hosted our survey, that does these surveys every 6 months about general trends, foreign policy issues, Turkey, are very low in the agenda. It's the economy, stupid as Clinton would say, that's right up there, right? So, and that has become the key concern for the electorate, the public, and so on. So it's interesting how these results would be, I mean, where public opinion would stand if the elite were to use or to start moving towards further rapprochement with Turkey on the basis of some of these results. Or because of crisis right now, and Greece feeling that it's being detached from the rest of the world, this might be even less likely. This morning, as I was putting the slide together, I was listening to an interview by one of the opposition leaders who leads this new party, Topotami. He gave an interview a couple of days ago on television, and it was interesting. You know, he was saying, and he was actually saying that not too long ago during Easter, Good Friday, in a village in Thrace, that's he said 100% Muslim village, former military personnel, together with a military guard, had a procession. You know, the procession on Good Friday around that village. Why? Why? And you know, and of course he was laying the blame on the current government's coalition partner, and of course the Minister of Defense coming from there. So we can see how public opinion might not, and of course, how did this come to the fore? This was not out in the news at all, but because that party, very interestingly, has received about 12% of the vote in that district from Greeks that are both Muslim and Orthodox, they came out and said, by the way, something is happening here that we don't like. But public opinion is important in that sense. It's not a priority. It could be. But it's something to keep in mind. Last two things. Growing exceptionalisms. This is a topic that's been of concern. I mean, we heard Soli's comments at the beginning, even Hans-Jorge's comments about where Greece is, where it's going, whether it's part of Europe, the EU. The salience of this debate is something that impacts on all Greeks and the elites. The feeling of detachment, of loosening the bonds with the West. The fact that maybe for the first time in our modern history, we feel that we've lost the support of allies and partners. Or maybe we ourselves are withdrawing from there. And in the attempt to withdraw, what is happening is the emergence of Greek exceptionalism to justify the fact that we are alone in the world. In fact, this is part legacy, part history. Geography plays a role. Greece has always been a flank state. Turkey has always been a flank state when it comes to the West. I think some of the things I'm saying about Greece, one could also transplant them to Turkey in that sense. And while we also have this growing exceptionalism here in Turkey, we need to keep this in mind. So this growing exceptionalism in a particular part of the world, one could even add Russia in that sense as a zone of exceptionalisms that's emerging, is a concern. So when we go to the last question, which is the question, the title of this meeting, Greek-Turkish rapprochement leading both countries closer to Europe, big question mark. I said that this is a question that, I mean, this has been the basis upon which Greek foreign policy has been dealing when it comes to Turkey over the last few years. Greece has been supporting the Turkey-EU relations. Greece has been supporting Turkey's EU bid. Yes, mind you, it has its demands upon Turkey, but the premise is we would like to have Turkey closer to us. When we ourselves are doubting our European credentials, we as a society, a lot of the political forces, unfortunately, the rise of populism contributing to this, what does it mean? And it's interesting, I was looking as you know, I presented to you the set of questions dealing with Greek-Turkish relations, but I went back to the survey, and in the set of questions where we asked the elite about Turkey per se, one of our questions was, question 11 was, to what degree do you agree with the following perspective on the foreign policy of Turkey? Turkey should join the EU. There, the same elite responded 29.7% totally disagree, and 24.7% rather disagree. So the majority of the elite said no. I mean, when you frame the question in terms of Greek-Turkish relations, 51%, I think the numbers were, said they favor Turkey's accession EU bid. But whether it should join, there's still a resistance to it, right? And so Europe has been a glue. On the other hand, as that is being undone, at least from the Greek side, it gives rise to further exceptionalism. And this is in part because the perception of growing Turkish activism at the same period scares the Greek elites. Now, the activism, yes, if you see Turkey, as Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu talks, as a trading state, well, some aspects are okay. And I think what the Greek elite would like is for their own country to be able to do the same thing, right? But if Turkey is viewed more as what another Turkish scholar talks as an unaligned middle super-regional power, Shaban Kardash talks about this, then that activism scares, because you have the emergence of an exceptionalism in Greece matched with an exceptionalism that's developing on its own terms here in Turkey. And I think this discourse about identity, belonging, and so on is having a negative impact. So the danger is that the glue, Europe, which Greece belongs to, and I hope will stay there for a long time and prosper and will overcome its troubles. Turkey aspires to, at least is still there pro forma, but we'll see how much that, as that glue is not as sticky as it used to be, where we have a problem. And maybe it might also be the time to really consider a new sort of discourse on both sides and strategy, or paradigmatic shift on how to replace relations on track. I mean, they are on track, but how to make sure that the rapprochement process is not totally unglued. So this is the basic things I wanted to say, Soli.
Okay.
And thanks.
Well, yes. Yes? Yeah. Well, Dimitri said everything, so I will be extremely brief.
Shall I skip you?
I mean...
No, please.
Yeah, of course, of course, of course. I'm not going to refer to the research results as such. There's no point. But let me, because I think Dimitris did not mention that it was a research project awarded and financed by the Hellenic Observatory of the London School of Economics. And he said that, but this is extremely important. It's the first time that we have hard data of this kind, which is a good thing. The bad thing is that we have nothing to compare it to. So we don't know whether there is a change. We don't know. We don't have a trajectory of elite opinion to work on. Let me, and you, I mean, it's obvious, it's not obvious, it's profound that results can be read as quite contradictory, and that's a main problem when you try to write a paper, an academic paper out of it. You can find the whole study at the LSE website. It's published and it's huge. I mean, it's, and the details of it. But although it's fascinating that to realize how contradictory the perceptions are, at the same time it makes our life extremely hard in coming up with an argument. And I've been thinking about it. First of all, and I would like to say just a couple of points, not in any particular order. First thing is that there is no doubt that Greek-Turkish relations have been, or are actually, in the best shape of their history. They have never been better in the last 40 years. Think about it. If you think the trajectory, the crisis trajectory in Greek-Turkish relations, it's the first time that we have a time span of 16 years without a crisis. We had one starting from 74. So 74, 77, 83, 87, 95, 99, and now it's the first time that we have got 15, 16 years without a major crisis erupting, political, diplomatic, let alone something that would involve military hardware. So it's, this is the first thing. The second thing is that in these 16 years, what we have, and that I think is implicit in the results that we get, the good, the positive results that we get, is the institutionalization of the relationship. Now, things that before 99 were, you know, very rare, were spectacular, were amazing, now it's part of everyday life. So ministers come and go between the two sides of the Aegean. We've got regular contacts at summit level. There is the strategic partnership arrangement. And this is reflected in everyday life. I mean, the not so young among us remember that UEFA, FIBA, they were not ranging games between Greek and Turkish sides in sports. Now, nothing bad about it. The other thing is, of course, the flourishing of the bilateral tourism trade, which is evident. And although we have an acquis of, let me use a 60s phrase, of peaceful coexistence so far, at least on the Greek sides, there is still the issue of trust. But I think that what we can start talking about in Greece is, I mean, in the past, the debate was whether Turkey was just a regional competitor or an adversary. I would presume that 8 out of 10 would have responded at that time that Turkey is an adversary. Now I think the adversary concept, perception, has lost much of its legitimacy. Of course, there are always the marginalized ultra-nationalist groups and parts of the population that think Turkey as the adversary of Greece, and that Turks always look towards the West. But I think now we are in a new debate that hopefully will sustain itself and will evolve in a positive way in the next 5 or 10 years. I mean, there are several qualifications for this to happen, but I think now we have moved from the competitor-adversary polarity to friend-competitor polarity. And why I'm saying that? First of all, data supports this, I think. If we look on the data, we can see that there is a growing constituency that would support, that is ready to accept that Turkey can be a friendly neighbor. And you've got public figures coming out strongly towards this. Mayor of Thessaloniki, just last week ago, delivering a public speech, he said that I see Turks as my brothers. It takes a lot of guts to do that. He's a special case, but still. On the other hand, you've got the Minister of Defense, who's organizing processions in Muslim Turkish villages in Thrace, without thinking that the same day, the same night, for the first time after many, many years, many decades, you had a public procession on Good Friday evening in Izmir. So you've got these, and you've got the foreign minister of Greece, who has a particular, let's say, identity. We know him from his books, from his writings, but he's a very clever chap. And I think his latest statements that Greece and Turkey should engage much more seriously in dialogue, it's a very promising sign. So, and I will say one last thing, both countries are in transition. Transition theory means that sometimes when you got countries in transition, you might have a revival of competitive, assertive, aggressive behaviors towards each other. So we have to be very careful during these transition periods. As for Greece, and I will stop here, when Dimitris asked where is Greece going, what came to my mind is a scene from a Bond film. You remember Goldfinger, where in 007 he drives in a narrow alley, fast and furiously, and he sees lights on the other end of the alley, and it's his own sides reflected, so he hits the wall. I think that's where we are now in Greece. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kostas. And now, if you could limit your comments to about 15 minutes so we can have time for question and answer. I'll start with Volkan Vural. Volkan Bey, do you really think that the relations are institutionalized, as Kostas suggested? And if you could also reflect, if you can, if you would, what was really the main cause of bad relations between Greece and Turkey? It strikes me that Cyprus was at the root of it, therefore decoupling I don't think is really possible. And where do you see these things are going in light of the findings of the research? Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I regret to inform you that almost in my 40 years career in the Turkish Foreign Service, I was lucky enough not to be involved on Cyprus or Turkish-Greek relations. That has helped me, I think, to keep my sanity. I disagree with the title of our discussion. I disagree with the word rapprochement, because I don't want to get involved